my name is Anthony Aquino. I'm the pastor of Cal Allen Baptist Church, and this is a regular vlog I call Things I Wish I Would Have Said Sunday Morning. This week we're going to be talking about King Herod, who's a descendant of Esau. Esau's descendants described in Genesis 36, and we know that Esau was upset, angry that he thought he had his birthright stolen from him. And the history of the Edomites, that's the descendants of Esau, would be that they would always be bitter, Hebrews 12, about having something that was theirs taken from them, and they would always be trying to get it back. And we see that throughout the Old Testament. And even to today, the Palestinians, I believe, are the descendants, or at least of the spirit of Esau, thinking that the blessing given to Jacob, given to the Jewish nation, should be theirs. And they're trying to claim the land just like the nation of Israel. All right, so King Herod being a descendant of Esau, what does that have to do with what I want to talk about right now? Well, in Luke 13:32, there's this very shocking statement Jesus makes. And he says to some Pharisees who come to warn him that the Pharisees come to him and say, Jesus, Herod wants to kill you. Don't forget, Herod's a descendant of Esau. And Jesus says to them, you go tell that fox. He calls him a fox. Go tell that fox, behold, I cast out demons, perform cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I complete my mission. He goes on in verse 34, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together like a hen gathers her own brood under her wings, but you refused. Behold, your house is left desolate to you. That's all right there in the same setting that he's warned by the Pharisees about King Herod wanting to kill him. Well, of course Herod wants to kill him. He wanted to kill him when Jesus was born because Herod knows that this is actually the king of the Jews, and Herod was sitting on a throne that wasn't his. All right. So Herod shows up, and then specifically, this is a son of Herod. This is of the Herodian dynasty, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to refer to him as Herod. Herod, being a descendant of Esau, tells these Pharisees, I wanted to kill Jesus, and they warn him. And what is Jesus' response? He calls him a fox. Now, at first hearing of this, we think, well, he's obviously referring to him as being just sly and cunning, and I'm sure that had something to do with it, but I think there's more to it here. I think there's a connection I think he's making a reference to the desire for the descendants of Esau to have the blessing that was given to the descendants of Jacob. And there's a specific reference to Herod and the way or the throne that was not his. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, he says fox. It's alopekes in Greek. Jesus also uses the term fox in Luke 9:58 when he says foxes have holes, birds have nests in the air, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. So we know that in the common parlance, Jesus could refer to a fox having a hole, and people would basically know what he's talking about. The behavior of a fox living in a hole was a common understanding. It may not be as much today, but if you go on the internet, if you go ask St. Google about a fox, you will find that a behavior that's well understood by zoologists. A fox, if you go try to identify a foxhole, it's kind of difficult because more often than not, a fox will not dig its own hole. It will occupy and take over the hole of another animal. And I think that is part of what Jesus is trying to refer to when he says, go tell that fox. They're warning Jesus. They're telling Jesus, Herod wants to kill you. Stop doing what you need to do and flee. And Jesus is saying, wait a second. He's a fox. I'm the lion from the tribe of Judah. I'm the one who has the right to that throne. He's occupying the throne. He is using the authority of someone else like a fox does. I think also Jesus is calling him a fox because a fox will spoil vineyards. They will just go through and ravage a vineyard and eat all the grapes of someone who has a gardener. And this is referred to in Song of Solomon 2:15. It says, catch us the fox, yes, the little foxes that spoil the vineyard. Well, Israel is called God's vineyard, and Jerusalem is called specifically his vine. And this is in Isaiah 5, verses 3 through 7. Jerusalem is called God's vineyard, specifically his vine. And so I think that's part of what Jesus is calling him a fox. As I mentioned in Song of Solomon 2:15, there's a biblical reference of a fox spoiling a vineyard. And Jesus is saying, look, he's a fox. You're concerned about him. You're worried about him and warning me. And he's going to cause the destruction of God's vineyard, you. And that's why I believe in 34, verse 34, he says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you kill the prophets and stone those that are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children under my wings like a hen. Essentially, I wanted to protect you, but you're going to be left desolate because of that fox who's going to spoil God's vineyard and spoil God's vine. And I think there's also another reason why. So first of all, he's saying to these Pharisees, you go tell that fox, that occupier, that one who wants to run me off, but I know he's occupying a throne, trying to get the blessing that was taken away from his ancestor, Esau, that was given to Jacob, trying to take that, usurp it, and take it for himself. And that's the spirit of Esau. In Genesis 27:37, Isaac actually gives Esau a blessing, and he says, your brother's going to rule over you. And I think that Herod, being a descendant of Esau, was certainly inspired to get that throne to try to get back the blessing of ruling over the other brother. And that goes on today in Israel. There's always this conflict between the Palestinians, who are the descendants of Esau, if not genetically, certainly spiritually, believing that the land is theirs. They have just as much of a claim to it, although God had not given it to them. God gave it to Israel, and yet they still are trying to get into the land and take that. That's of the spirit of Esau, and it was of the spirit of Herod. And Jesus is saying, I'm not going to run. I have work I have to do. You are an occupier. You have a throne, a fox. It's not yours. Also, you are a fox in the sense that you're going to spoil God's vineyard, which is Israel, and his vine, Jerusalem. Song of Solomon refers to a fox doing that, spoiling a vineyard. And Isaiah 5, verses 3 through 7, specifically, Israel is called God's vineyard and Jerusalem his vine. So I think it's another reference, being an occupier and causing the destruction. That's why he calls him a fox. And finally, I think he calls him a fox because a fox as a predator is considered to be a weak, ineffective leader. All right? As human beings, we're not afraid of a fox. We're afraid of a lion, Jesus being a lion from the tribe of Judah. But Jesus is saying, you want me to be afraid of a fox? I'm the lion from the tribe of Judah. Now, I could protect Jerusalem. I could protect you, but you won't have me rule over you. You're having this fox. I'm not going to go run away. I'm going to do the work I have to do. When I get finished, I'll be finished. He's a fox. In Nehemiah 4:3, there's a verse essentially says this, they're trying to describe a wall as being weak, and the verse says a fox could jump on that wall and knock it down. Essentially, he's calling the fox a weak animal. And I think that Jesus is also saying that he's weak. I'm not going to run from him. I'm the lion from the tribe of Judah, and I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to do what I have to do. You are the ones, Jerusalem, Pharisees, that should be warned, because that fox doesn't scare me. He's going to cause your destruction. And that's why he gives verse 34 about Jerusalem being left desolate. So this term fox, we initially think it's just talking about someone being sly. No, I think it refers back to King Herod being a descendant of Esau and trying to get back the blessing of the land and the blessing of kingship that was given to Jacob, but Esau feeling that it should have been his and his descendants. The spirit of Esau are still doing that today. And in the time of Herod, by taking the throne and trying to rule over Jacob's descendants when that was illegitimate. So Jesus calls him a fox. You're occupying, like a fox takes over a hole that he didn't dig. Jesus is saying he's a fox. He's on the throne that's not his. That's not his. He's occupying it. Also, he's saying that he's weak. He's a fox. Nehemiah 4:3 calls a fox a weak animal. I'm the lion from the tribe of Judah, Jesus is saying. I'm not worried about him. I'm going to do what I have to do. You need to be worried about him. Why? Because, in the third reference, he is a fox in the sense that he's going to lead to your destruction. I'm not worried about him causing my destruction. Yours, Jerusalem, because you wouldn't have me rule over you, the rightful king. Now you're going to be destroyed by allowing this fox, this usurper, to have authority over the nation that should be Jesus Christ, to allow a descendant of Esau to try to get back the blessing that's not his to have. It is actually the descendants of Jacob. And that's what Jesus, I believe, is making reference to and using this term fox, calling King Herod a fox. What does that mean for us? Well, quite simply, we should personally make sure we don't allow anything to usurp authority in our life that only Jesus should have, who has the rightful throne in our own lives, being our Lord and Savior. He's the one who has the authority, and that is his kingdom in our own lives to rule over us. And so we should submit to that and not allow a usurper to get on the throne of our lives. Why? Because it will lead to our destruction. And that's our personal application. But today, in the day of geopolitics, we should remember that the conflict going on in the land of Israel, specifically Jerusalem, that is right now between mainly between the descendants of Esau and the descendants of Jacob, Palestinians and Israelites, is going on. And I think that this, both having this claim to the land, goes back to this constant warring and trying to recapture the blessing that Esau believes to be his, and that's the spirit of Esau referred to in Hebrews chapter 12. So, in conclusion, Jesus calls him a fox because he's an occupier. He is a weak leader with no authority. And finally, he's going to lead to the destruction of the nation. That's why Jesus calls him a fox. Let's don't let a fox be our rule on the throne of our lives. Let's submit to the authority of the Lion from the tribe of Judah. Thank you. Shalom. God bless. Jesus is Lord. Amen.